Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you would indulge me for a couple of seconds. I want to sincerely thank Vice Chair Gonzalez and Wally and Vice Chair Wilson and certainly Chair Bonin for all the work that we have done as a part of this particular budget. And there are a lot of things in here that we all like and a lot of things in here that we absolutely don't like. But I wanted to thank this body in particular, as you have worked with all of us as a part of appropriations to see how we can improve some of the things that are very near and dear to me and then for many others, and that was the funding of the HBCUs. To be able to put an amendment in, and I must sincerely thank Chairman Murphy for allowing me to do that, to support Prairie View A&M. My conversation and where I stand on this has never changed. We have, and the reason why I wanted to speak on the bill is because of the work that we have done and the work that we have been able to notice has been done. But unfortunately, we know we can't get everything. But as we talk about organizations and schools like Texas Southern University that has historically been underfunded, and to see for this particular conference committee formula runs, Texas Southern from year to year, for this year alone, we'll see a 20% reduction in the funding. And while I have talked to Chairman Bonin about this, and there have been some very great conversations that we have had, and 20%, and we've had great conversation, and I certainly thank him for putting the money back in for the deferred maintenance of $4 million, but Texas Southern is still at $150 million of needed appropriations for deferred maintenance. I think it's very important that I bring this to your attention, this is not for shame, this is simply for education, because it certainly is in this state's interest to invest in college education. And we must continue to do that, and we must continue to do that with Texas Southern, Prairie View, UT, and A&M. But I wanted to bring you to the attention of how Texas Southern even came about. Texas Southern was born out of the necessity for a young man named Herman Sweat that wanted to who was from Houston, graduate of Wiley College, went on to the University of Michigan and wanted to come back to go to law school and applied at UT. Unfortunately, was unable to get into UT simply for the color of his skin. And because of that, this body, the Texas legislature, created the Texas State College for Negroes in 1947. And from that, they also created the first law school for Negroes. But from that time, the institutions have never been fully funded, have never been given the funds that it needs in order to compete. But I can guarantee you, Texas Southern time and time again puts out great product like the late Barbara Jordan, the late Congressman Mickey Leland, our very own Miss Sophronia Thompson, Harold Dutton, Joe Desatil, Ron Reynolds, Sean Theory, have placed Dr. Alma Allen. These have been fantastic people that have done wonderful work in this state and are all graduates of Texas Southern University. Texas Southern continues to do more with less. I'm sorry, Retta Bowers also is from Texas Southern too. I'm sorry, Victoria, Sergio, thank you. Anybody else went to CSU I'm forgetting? Crockett, Representative Crockett, give me some others. Oh, Gia, where's Bobby? Gia, there he is. Also, all of these wonderful graduates, and so I didn't know that we had that many graduates of Texas Southern. Great product, and so I'm looking forward to, we put into the LBB, unfortunately the Senate did not accept those LBBs, and I hope that when we come back for the special session, that we'll take a good, long, hard look at the inadequacies of funding for these HBCUs that have meant so much to this great state and have done such wonderful work and have put out wonderful product. This is not, again, this is an opportunity for me to thank Dr. Bonin and Dr. Gonzalez and Wally and Representative Wilson. This is an opportunity for me to thank them, but it's also an opportunity to say we have to do more. And if we don't, we put this state at a disadvantage. And so I want to make sure that when we look at where we're placing money, that we have to put money where money needs to go, and that is in education, in particular education for institutions like Texas Southern and Prairie View.
Mr.
So
Speaker,
with that,
Mr. Reynolds, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield for some
Would
questions?
the gentleman yield for questions?
yes, sir.
He yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Johnson, thank you for discussing the inception and history of how Texas Southern University was formed. And I think you talked about Mr. Sweat. And in fact, it was a result of a lawsuit, Sweat versus Painter. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Are you aware that it was the Texas legislature during the 15th legislative session under Senate Bill 140 that created the Texas State University for Negroes?
I am aware of that, yes.
And as you articulated, that was because Mr. Sweat could not attend the University of Texas Law School, and the way that they handled the matter was they created a separate school that was initially in Austin, but that ultimately ended up going to Houston, of what we now know as Texas Southern University. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was on March 3rd of 1947. Is that your understanding?
That is correct.
Okay. So, and are you aware that Texas Southern University has had a significant impact on serving underserved communities? Traditionally, many first to attend college African American and Hispanic students.
That is absolutely correct. And when you look at what's happening with the 60 by 30 put out by the Higher Education Coordinating Board, Texas Southern University, Prairie View A&M are those institutions that absolutely reach and meet that particular that particular goal of 60 by 30. We have recognized that the unemployment rate for Black and Hispanics are at an all-time high in the state of Texas right now, and we understand that institutions like Texas Southern provide those opportunities to meet those needs and those jobs. So, absolutely.
And in fact, are you aware that in 1973, the Texas legislature recognized TSU's involvement in programs and services particularly suited for the needs of urban residents by designating the institution as a special purpose institution for urban programming? Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
That was this state legislature, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware that the institution distinguishes itself as one of the leading producers of African American scholars that obtain collegiate, professional, and graduate degrees in this state and in this country? Are you aware of that?
In the areas of law, pharmacy, and in yours truly, I went to the School of Communications.
And are you aware that they also offer doctoral programs, including a Doctor of Philosophy in Environmental Toxicology?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some of the budget shortfalls that you've articulated. And I find some of those particularly troubling. Is it your understanding, and you talked about a 20% cut in formula funding, is that what you articulated?
Yes.
And are you aware that the request was made for $303.5 million by Texas Southern University?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that the university only received $4 million
of that
request?
Of the deferred maintenance.
Of the deferred maintenance.
The deferred maintenance. But the deferred maintenance is going to be different from the formula funding.
Correct.
And I want to be very clear about this. Again, to the credit of Dr. Bonin, that whereas we look at that, I want to be very clear on how we got to this point, because this is not the first session that this has happened. This has been over a course of years. But I do know that we want to bring attention to it so that it doesn't continue to happen. And again, to the credit of those members that I've had an opportunity of talking to, they have absolutely agreed that we're on the right track, but a good education is important. And I must thank Representative Rainey and Price for hearing these and understanding to want to be a part of it, to help.
Representative Johnson, are you aware that there are currently students living in moldy dorm rooms?
Yes.
Are you aware that there's no working air conditioning in several of the buildings on campus?
Unfortunately, with shame, I say that as a state institution, The conditions of a state institution in the state of Texas are shameful.
And are you aware that Texas Southern University made basic fundamental requests to improve the conditions of those buildings?
Yes.
Okay, and so is your understanding that we're going to work together during the interim to come back and make additional requests so that TSU can be made whole?
Absolutely. And
I thank you for your work.
That's the goal, and I certainly hope that we will get to that point.
I thank you for your work, Representative Johnson, as well as other members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Gentleman's time's expired.